All right, guys, how you doing tonight? We had a really good day today. We had removed dead, dying oak tree, and we did some trimming, and got it all done, and even the loader truck came and picked it up. So we have been working on another skid steer log splitter. A lot of people don't understand how important, when you're splitting firewood, if you can eliminate breaking your back, that is the most important thing, because the hardest thing to do when you're splitting wood is manually picking up the wood time after time after time. What's in this box is going to basically make our skid steer pick up the log splitter. So instead of picking up the wood, the log splitter is picked up and put on top of the wood. So I can't express enough how important it is, if you have a mini skid or any type of skid steer, to have an attachment to turn your skid steer into the best log splitter money can buy. Another thing, anybody can make one. If you have a welder and you have access to steel, you can build your own attachment to split wood. And once you use one of these, you are never ever going to want to go back to the regular way of splitting wood. It's kind of like when you get a smartphone and then they try to hand you back a split phone. You just don't even want to use it anymore, and that's what happens. You get spoiled. Well, I have been spoiled. This is kind of heavy. It's probably gonna flip the table over. Now you can make these. We've made them in our shop. Looks like this one's been sandblasted, and they're fine. There's sometimes they're a little bit tight, but you can make these. If you make these, you're probably going to have more money tied up in making one than it is buying one, because these are like less than $100. And it's worth it. We found out it's just worth it to buy them rather than make them, unless you're making them on a massive scale. If you have to buy a bunch of steel and you have a plasma cutter, or if you have some fancy cutter that cuts out the blanks, and then you have something that can bend it. So basically, if you're able to make these for less than $100, you have to make them in volume, because if you think about it, how much does a welder cost an hour? Like if you have someone weld this, if you can't weld yourself, a welder's anywhere from $75 to $150 an hour, and their minimum is at least an hour. So you're gonna have more money tied up in just labor than you are the whole attachment plate. So anyway, this is, I call it the Toro Dingo attachment plate, because Toro Dingo was kind of one of the first mass-produced mini skids, and so everything is kind of based on that same platform. So this can be welded to any attachment, and you can change it into something that you use on a mini skid. Of course, it has to weigh under, like, I would say most of your skids like under 500 pounds, because like I think this one of the smallest mini skids, like say the SK600, it can pick up like 600 pounds. So by the time you put 600 pounds on it and then you go to pick up a log or try to split wood, it's going to be off balance. So I recommend, if you're using if you're going to build something like this, I'd recommend an SK 800 or bigger, because I mean you can do it on smaller machines depending on what type of material and what type of wood you're splitting. But I found out that anything in SK 752, SK 755, SK 800, or anything larger, especially if you have a counterweight, or you have a bigger guy running the equipment, that is going to be the optimal. And then also too, the higher you go up, the bigger pumps you have, the bigger motor. So it's going to have more pressure, more power to more efficiently run the splitter. But we haven't, I haven't hooked up anything bigger than a SK 800 to our log splitter. I'd like to maybe hook up a 1050, a 1550, and a 3000 to see what the difference in performance would be to increase the pressure. So, but we're going to take this to the shop tomorrow, and we're going to hook it up to the splitter that we just manufactured. We bought an old, this is like the first one I bought. Well, actually the first one that we made was from a real old log splitter, homemade log splitter. The second one we made, the best one we have and still use today, it was made 7 or 8 years ago, almost 10 years ago. We're still using it today. We've had to weld it, touch it up a little bit, but every once in a while we have to replace the pads. But it is split countless amounts of logs, huge logs. And I wanted to get another one because we have two mini skids, and I wanted to speed up production and just make it a little easier and a little faster. And then also too, it's better on the machines if you can have 2 of everything, because if one breaks down or you have issues working on one, you can switch over and have another one to work with, because we very rarely run everything at once. I always try to have 2 of everything, 2 of every attachment, 2 of every machine. So you should have at least 2 chainsaws of each kind. You should have 2 mini skids of each kind. So I have 2. I did have 3, but we have at least 1 backup. So I have a SK 752 and I have a SK 800. We used to have a SK 755, but we sold it. We're also thinking about getting a Ditch Witch Zahn to use around the shop, and also to have a 3rd machine, because it's really nice. Right now we have to switch back and forth attachments every once in a while, so it's really nice to have that 3rd machine. Also too, the Zahn will fit through like a 34-inch gate, and also too, it has a articulating steering mechanism, so, and it has turf tires, so it's very it's a lot easier on the grass. It can't turn as sharp, but if you have a really nice lawn and you have a really tight area, you have to get through a really small gate. Instead of using a dolly, you can use a Zahn, but they're kind of hard to find and they're expensive to buy, because you can buy SK 800 for about the same price. So I don't want to spend, if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'm just going to get another SK 800. But if I can find a used Zahn somewhere, because I already have a few attachments for them, that's what I'm going to get. So anyway, we have about, I bought the 3-point hitch log splitter for like 550 bucks, and then I paid our welder about 250 to basically tear everything apart and rebuild everything. And then I spent about 150 bucks on steel. We still have some steel left, but just to give you an idea of what it takes. And then of course it took about 2 or 3 hours of drive time to go get it, purchase it, set it up. So we're right at, let's see, about $1,000, right under $1,000. But if you go out and buy one, the reason that we like to buy used equipment and fix it up, it's, well, for one, it's cheaper, less expensive, and then also two, we make it to spec, because everything you buy right now, like they don't even make, I've never been able to find a log splitter that is specifically designed to fit on a mini skid. For one reason, is they're all built for bobcats and big machines. Big machines have enough ass, and they put the attachment plate on the back of the unit. So the log splitting is way out 6 or 7 or 8 feet away from you. And if that happens, there's only so much you can pick up, especially if we would mount the that same, like what you can do is take this attachment plate and you can weld it right inside a bobcat attachment plate. And we've done that before on buckets. It works awesome on buckets. But on your bigger attachments where the weight is away from you, you can still do that. But if we did that with a log splitter, we try to pick up big pieces of wood. If you reach out and you grab a big piece of wood that's like 6 or 7 or 8 feet away from you, when you pick it up, the ass end's gonna come up. And also too, it's harder to see unless you have a hole inside your beam. You can't really, it's hard to see what you're doing, because if you're splitting the wood this way, the beam hides what you're splitting. And also too, when you're picking up the wood, you have to have, you figure if you pick up a log that's 8 feet away from you, and then it's, you know, some of the logs are like 10 or 15 foot long or longer, and then your bobcat is, you know, like 6 or 8 feet, and then you got another 6 or 8 feet. You got 16 feet this way and 16 to 20 feet this way. Can you imagine the turning radius you have to have in order to operate that thing? I don't know about you, but we don't have like a whole acre just to split wood. You know, we have an acre, and we accommodate everything. We have our shop, our office, all our equipment. We don't have enough room to basically have a machine like that to spin around. So when you have a mini skid and the attachment plate is very close and your wood splitter is very close, we can still pick up like 700 or 800, 1,000 pound log, because it's right next to us. Half the weight is towards us, half the weight is against us. So basically what happens, it turns sideways, but it doesn't flip forward. So you can balance the weight, and the only thing you're picking up that big for that amount of time is basically you pick it up and you basically cut it. So you can have 2 guys cut from each end, and before you know it, that log's cut up within less than a minute. So you're only picking it up and holding it just to cut it up. So that's basically why we do it that way. I think it's just easier to buy an older log splitter, and also too, you can usually find them. A 3-point hitch normally I've found is the best way to go, because you don't have all the excess, like you don't have the motor and all that stuff. Basically a 3-point hitch, a lot of them, all it is the beam. It has the cylinder already on it. Sometimes you even have the hoses. So basically you just have to cut off the axle, and you have to put 2 quick connects on it. So there's not a lot of things you have to do or things you have to buy. The only reason I had to buy extra steel is because the person I bought it from, it was a hodgepodge job, and it was just, you've seen it in the videos before. We weren't able to use it or beef it up. It was just, it was putting stress on the cylinder, and it was all wore out. It was all wobbled out, oblong. So basically our welder cut everything apart, and we built our own pusher, and actually the wedge we still use. The wedge was fine. We just had to add a little bit to it and strengthen it and put something behind it. But basically the shape was there, the metal was there, the cylinder was there, the hydraulic hoses were there. So the only thing we had to buy is $150 worth of steel, and we had to provide a torch and a welder. And we used low hydrogen on most of the parts that were using the pressure, and then we can use a wire feed to fill in, to make it, you know, to fill in the gaps and stuff like that. But I think eventually if I cannot find, because I was looking online, I was like, well, I can purchase a log splitter for a bobcat, but the cheapest one I could find was like $1,600 plus shipping. So you know, shipping's probably $200 or $300, $400 plus packaging. So you're still close to $2,000, And when you get it, you still have to cut off the attachment plate or buy this attachment plate and weld it on the side. And then you're going to probably have to change a few things to make it work. So you're going to end up spending over $2,000, and it might not be exactly what you want. So I'd rather spend $1,000 and make it the way I want it. I mean, the steel's not brand new, but you know, there's a couple other options that I might look forward to trying to adopt. But as far as right now, you can't get much for $1,000. There's just nothing out there that you can buy for $1,000. I mean, especially with the steel prices up and everything kind of way too expensive. This is the cheapest, most efficient way you can do it. So if you're out there and if you want to make one of these, the best thing to do is go on Facebook or go on Craigslist and put an ad for used log splitters, and especially broken ones. Like if the motor's burnt out or even the cylinder's busted, whatever, try to get one that's in disrepair, because you don't need the motor, you don't need the wheels, you don't need the axle. All you need is the beam, the cylinder, and the cutting wedge and the pusher. But all that stuff can be rebuilt. And if they have everything, even if it's in disrepair, if you're good with a welder and you have a place to buy some scrap steel, you can take that. And these attachment plates, like I said, you can build one yourself, or you can order one for less than $100. So basically, if you can find a used splitter for $500 or less, or you can pick one up for less than that or free, or you can pick one up. A lot of people scrap them when they, if you know, like even go to the scrap yard or talk to some of your scrappers that pick up stuff, because sometimes you never know. You might find a old log splitter with a blown motor that, you know, maybe it's been sitting in the woods and everything is like basically rusted. You can take that, sandblast it, and rip the motor off, cut everything apart, save the beam and save the pusher, and save the wedge. And you might have to, worst case scenario, say if it still has a cylinder, you might have to have the cylinder repacked. But having the cylinder repacked is like $100 compared to buying a $200 or $300 cylinder. So anyway, this is Roger with Roger's Reviews. If you like this review, press the like button. Any questions or comments, please leave them in the bottom there in the comment section. I will try to answer them the best I can. So tomorrow, if our welder's not busy, we should have this up and running. Everything's done. We just have to put the attachment plate on and get some new quick connects, because the ones we have are old and they're leaking a little bit, but at least we can show a demonstration of how it works and see how good it works and see if we need to repack the old cylinder. Eventually, I'm going to have it pressure washed and painted. I would like to have it sandblasted and powder coated, but you know, that's basically just for looks. You don't really need to do that. But if I were manufacturing them, I would leave that up to the customer and give them the option to have it painted or sandblasted and powder coated, because the difference in price is going to be a couple $100. I know it's going to last a lot longer, but I've been using mine. They built it like 30 years ago. They used it as a log splitter for like 10 or 15, 20 years. And then I've been using it. And all I did was wash it, and I wire brushed it, and I painted it. And we wire brush it and paint it every, 5 or 6 years, and it's still lasting. The steel's so thick, it doesn't really hurt it. It's nice to have something that's powder coated and cleaned and pretty. If you sandblast it and powder coat it, lasts longer. It would just be, you'd have to paint it less often, touch it up less often. But if you're not worried about looks and you just want something that works, and you want to save some money, just clean it up. I mean, for all practical purposes, you don't even have to buy paint. You could basically just rub it down with oil. Take used motor oil and rub that thing down, because you have to put grease on it anyway. It might not look the best, it might not smell very good, it might be dirty and nasty, but I guarantee you it won't rust as fast, and it'll still operate fine. So there's all kinds of different options. You don't have to, all these guys have the biggest, nicest, prettiest equipment, But if you look at these videos and find out like basically how they started, and a lot of guys, they start these, log splitting businesses, and they already have enough income. It doesn't matter to them. It's more like a hobby. It's not something that they're making money with. They're not living off of it. It's more of a hobby. But if you guys are basically starting off like I did with nothing, and you started a tree service with nothing, and you're starting your firewood business with nothing, a lot of times you have to find ways that are more practical but still work. There was a big tree service, guy's multi-millionaire. He saw me splitting with this machine about 8 years ago, and he came up behind me and was watching me for like 10 or 15 minutes I wasn't aware of. And he said, "Where did you get that?" I said, "We build it." And he said, "I've spent over $50,000 on a firewood processor, and it doesn't work half as good as what you got." So that goes to show you, you can be a pretty boy, you can have millions of dollars, but a lot of times the guys that just build things out of their shop can build things that are more efficient and more practical, that cost less money but still make you money. So don't try to keep up with the Joneses, because a lot of times what you can think about in your head, like, these things don't exist. I saw something on a YouTube video and I was like, I wonder if you can make that similar product, that log splitter, to fit on a mini skid. It's never been done. And I found somebody, one of my buddies had an old log splitter he didn't use. It was sitting in the woods. His dad built it for him when he was like a teenager. It was not being used. It was all rusted, nasty. He goes, "What do you want that for?" "It's a piece of garbage." I said, "Don't worry about it. Just bring it to me and I'll show you." He brought it to me. We cut everything apart. We added a attachment plate, added some quick connects, painted up. We had a couple of different versions. It took us about 3 or 4 different times to kind of change it, and then we added a 4-way to it. And now that piece of equipment that had been sitting in the woods that nobody wanted is now one of the best pieces of equipment that I would not sell it for any amount of money. That piece of equipment, that attachment, has saved so many backs, has produced more firewood, has given us the ability for one man to do more work and split more wood than a whole team of men. And I don't care what you say, I don't care how much money you spend on a firewood processor. Firewood processors are made for people who buy wood to put in that processor. If you're splitting firewood, if you go cut trees down and everything's different, everything's knotted up, I guarantee you, if you go buy a firewood processor, it's not going to be able to split everything you put into it, especially with the 6- and 8-way wedges. I guarantee some of the wood we have that's all knotted up will clog that thing up every time. Anyway, this is Roger with Roger's Reviews. Sorry to be a run-on, but I just had to put that out there. I know I sound like a broken record. I keep repeating myself, but I guarantee if you guys go out and buy a used, broken up old log splitter, and you spend some time and effort, spend a little money sanding it down and changing it and put an attachment plate on it, a couple quick connects, I guarantee you it'll be the best money you ever spent. If you split firewood, it's going to save your back. So if you have a mini skid or if you have a bobcat, do whatever you can to find something you can put on there to split firewood, because it will save you your back, and it will turn one man into a firewood processor. Have a great day. Take care, and God bless.